This broadcast of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series is brought to you by Malois Transport and AssurAction Transport Expert. For oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec, visit www.malois-transport.ca. And for an expert and professional trucking insurance firm specializing in property and casualty insurance solutions across freight for Quebec, Canada and the United States, visit www.transportexpert.com. Welcome to round 2 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America in Season 1, powered by Malois Transport and AssurAction Transport Expert, and live exclusively here on TRTN. You join us at the first double stint race of the season here in Little Budworth, Cheshire at the historic Oulton Park circuit. Founded on the Oulton estate, former farmland and US military garrison under General Patton in the year 1958. Oulton Park represents a significant chapter of the MSV lineup, arguably one of its holy trinity, alongside Donington Park and Brands Hatch in the modern day. Oulton Park's history is defined by a resounding presence in all things national motorsport, with the British Touring Car Championship, British Superbikes Championship and British GT Championships all holding rounds here in Oulton Park. Historically, it held rounds for GB3, British F3, F5000 and up until 2004, a special non-championship event for the discerning few at the pinnacle of motorsport here in Great Britain, the Oulton Park International Gold Cup, a prestigious event that has seen the likes of Sir Stirling Moss, Jack Brabham, Jackie Stewart, Jackie Ickx, John Surtees, Denny Holm and Tim Harvey compete over its 46 years in operation. It was closed in 2004. Today, it hosts round 2 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup, consistent of a schedule very familiar to those of you who have been tuning in the last couple of days here on broadcasting here on TRTN as we bring up the regulations for round 2 of the championship, as it is a very familiar sight indeed. 2 10-minute qualies and 2 30-minute races with no mandatory pit stop here for the first of CPL's double stint format, with a free practice session here at the very start for 20 minutes that you'll have us for before we're into the real meat and potatoes of this round, the first of our 2 qualifying sessions. Only 2 new drivers to speak of. Sadly, we only had the data for one of them at this time, but getting a gander at the second of our 2 new drivers as well, we can see as well the number 72 of Filippo Cataneo in the Mercedes will also be joining us, hopefully, for this round. We also have a definite signing here, the number 30 of David Tangray with Aston Martin. And hailing from Canada, it's looking to be a very exciting second round of the championship, following on the trails of what was an absolute showstopper opening round that saw Christian Lebay surge to the top of the championship standings. And moreover, let's get on to the discussion of the championship standings here, as we have about 16 minutes left to go here in free practice before we're on to the first of our 2 qualifying sessions. Lebay leads the charge by 4 points ahead of Giovanni Badiali, who makes second place himself, 3 points ahead of Anthony Villorio to round out those podium positions. Byron Forrest on your screens at the moment in the 824 Porsche makes 4th position with 24 points he himself, 3 points ahead of the last of the top 5s, Timo de Tosto in the 58 Mercedes. Liam Bello in 6th place with 19 points is ahead of Richard Cecil by only 2 points. The Alpine in 7th. Kevin Quain in 8th position, and then rounding out the top 10 for our championship standings, Carl Martel with 13 points and Graham Green in 10th with 11 points in the championship. We're watching here with Byron Forrest right now on the first of his flying laps here in free practice. Plenty of time to consider our odds here. What is going to be 2 separate races compacted into the same avenue here. 2 10-minute qualifying sessions and 2 30-minute races. It cut almost perfectly down the middle. That's going to give twice as many opportunities here for drivers to make a real mark on the opening rounds of the championship. Getting a look at the calendar as to where we are right now, of course, only at round 2. You'll be finding us again in Suzuka for round 3, back onto the standard 60-minute format, and then interchanging that with Donington Park for round 4 of the championship. That is going to be a really exciting one to cover there for the second of our sprint formats before the season midway at round 5, back to standard at Imola on September 16th. Then for the last of our, I should say as well, Donington is the midway mark, because I'm so used to that 10-round calendar. But then heading into round 6 on September 23rd, we'll find ourselves back into that double stint format at Watkins Glen, and also for the finale at round, penultimate at round 7, with the final race being back on that 60-minute format. So juggling in between the two variable formats of this championship, the standard of which you saw just a week ago in Laguna Seca. Now we find ourselves in the first of those double stints, and it's going to be a very, very exciting time to be a part of this championship. We watch here with Byron Forrest as he makes his way to the line to set the first of his flying laps here. 1:42.685 on the number 824 Porsche. Let's get a look around the grid on what looks to be record high numbers heading into round 2. Giovanni Badiali makes second fastest, and Richard Cecil, who just passed him up there in the number 5 Alpine, makes the third fastest so far. We see that, though, quickly usurped by the presence of the 101 Chevrolet of Liam Bello. Speaking of Chevrolet, let's get a look at their balance of performance statistics. As we saw, they were on a much better stead heading into the opening round at Laguna Seca. We actually find that it's no too different, with 12 kilos shed off of the Camaro GT4R, but they're not seeing the most benefit coming into round 2 of the championship. That honour goes to Aston Martin. 20 kilos cut off the Vantage is going to be giving a very, very hefty bit of leeway for the number 30 of David Tanguay, and more onto that discussion in the next 15 or so minutes before the start of Quali 1, as it's looking very, very promising, to put it bluntly there, for the number 30, to put it lightly, I should say. Very promising in terms of those qualifying predictions. We'll get onto that when we hit Quali 1. Looking elsewhere in those balance of performance statistics, Audi with 19 kilos shed off just get pipped out there for the most weight lost by Aston Martin by a single kilo. McLaren losing 15 kilos. And then into the positives, Mercedes gaining 9 kilos, Alpine gaining 12, and Porsche gaining 16. So not a particularly great time for either Porsche or Alpine coming into this round. Just bringing that back up again. Sadly, we don't have any data to parlay with here for BMW. We'll be able to potentially get a look here, and they find themselves on the worst end of things with 12 kilos added. So for Giovanni Badiali, he's not going to be feeling too pronounced of an effect in the right direction where he desperately needs it to be here, as he's right close to the lead of the championship. Only 4 points behind Christian Lebay in the lead of things heading into round 2 of the championship. But with double the races comes double the scoring opportunities, and getting a look at the scoring system. Now, this is from what we've been able to piece together over the course of the last fortnight here of coverage with the Competizione Performance League, and the scoring. This is according to their sim grid as well, has not been changed to reflect the smaller rounds here. I think it will still count towards the same result as a 60-minute race, so that really does give us plenty of opportunity to explore what we could be up against here. And it's 33 points for the leading position, 30 points for second, 27 points for third, 24 points for fourth, 21 points for fifth, 19 points for sixth, 17 points for seventh, 15 points for 8th, 13 points for 9th, and 11 points for 10th, with a fastest lap point there in play. That's what's giving Christian Lebay that 34 points that leads the championship at the moment. And speaking of Lebay, he's just gone fastest here and then some, as he extends the margin into the high 41s at the end of that last lap just gone. The 119 is gunning for another victory here already, and really, can you blame him in the time we've been able to recover the statistics? Now, this is across both GT3 and GT4. He's up 7 victories, including the one he took in Laguna Seca last week. So he is really gunning for total domination of this championship, no holds barred and no quarter given. Really, with performance like this, it is very, very hard for anyone to stand in the way, but we'll be on to that discussion as things are closer than one would believe at this time. Byron Forrest, second fastest then with Porsche. Despite that less than beneficial balance of performance, Porsche are still pulling through strong here, and Byron Forrest seems right at home with the Cayman on a much more technical track like Oulton Park. Getting a look back onto that track map as well, we find ourselves 17 corners enriched by 2.6 miles of FIA grade 3. So what does that mean? Slightly less absorbent, less available heat to play with there. Track conditions are going to be a little bit more variable from corner to corner, and the condition of the road itself will be slightly worse off compared to the grade 2 of Brands Hatch or the grade 1 that you'd find in other British tracks like Silverstone. Watch here, heading down into Britain's chicane here. We'll get a full tour of the track in a moment's time. Let's see if we can try and catch on board with the driver just heading over to the start-finish line here. So we're going to try and catch on board with the 119 of Christian Lebay, staying on board with last round's race winner as we go on a comprehensive tour of Oulton Park. Starting things off then just out of turn 17 at Deer Leap. We'll head straight down into the Old Hall corner. This long sweeping right-hander gets our drivers ready with very little runoff there available to the left-hand side for the run downhill through Denton's here at turn 2. The slight kink to the right gives rise to a very fast sweeping left-hander at Cascades. We've seen plenty of drivers go awry in both GT3 and GT4, so it's surefire to be a very fiery mix coming into today's round. Christian Lebay does call in his flying lap for the time being, so we're getting catch on board with one of the other Chevrolets here. Karl Martel, number 99, makes his way through turn 4 Island Bend into the Shell Oils corner here at turn 5. This banked right-hander, this open hairpin right, we've seen what that can do in the wet. It looks to be more favourable dry conditions coming into round 2 today. Now into the first of our 2 chicanes here for the full international layout, turns 7, 8 and 9 at Britain's. Very quickly navigated there by the monstrously large Chevrolets here. They seem almost to eclipse the road's width here as we head up Hilltop into turn 10 and 11 at Hislop's. Plenty of hair-raising moment in the world of the British Touring Car Championship at this section of the track, no doubt. Up through turn 12 at Knickerbrook Corner, then on to Clay Hill at turn 13 as we enter sector 3. Very fast corners here, requires a lot of guts, a lot of gusto in this section. A very old-fashioned design here. Not a lot has changed since 1958. We now find ourselves rocketing out of Druids Corner here, not to be confused with Druids at Brands Hatch, another MSV circuit. So we go rocketing up Warwick Bridge to Lodge Corner at turn 16. Then on to our final corner right after turn 16 here. A little bit of an off-camber corner, a bit of a awkward one for the GT4s. Out through turn 17 we go then at Deer Leap and to the checkered line there to mark that last lap of 1:44.270 by Karl Martel with the Chevrolet team. We quickly watch here Giovanni Badiali. Now he is gunning for that front row, and so too is the driver right in front of him, and he'll be the discussion of the day, the number 30 of David Tanguay, the one of the newest signings for round 2 of the championship. But Aston Martin seems to be a real rising prospect, and it seems like absolute pay dirt today for Tanguay as he's got beneficial balance of performance. He finds his way up to 6th. Badiali usurps him there and then some, making his way to 3rd. We saw that Badiali was no slouch back in Laguna Seca, making his way to 2nd at the end of that round. So he is definitely looking here to make a mark on the championship, but with that iron wall defense by Christian Lebay, absolutely dominating round 1, and especially with more recent competition we can see here before the end of free practice and into quali 1 by Byron Forrest. The American actually, as a matter of fact, 0.005 of a second ahead of the Italian in the number 998 BMW. It is going to be a very exciting qualifying round here, and we'll have more information to play with as we head into quali 1. Right now, just about 6.5 minutes left to go here. We watch with Badiali and Tanguay. Let's, as a matter of fact, get on board with the Aston Martin, the only Aston Martin in this round of the championship. And as we mentioned, Aston Martin have some really, really beneficial balance of performance. 20 kilos cut off the Vantage you see on screen here, almost clad in the colours of, dare I say, now this is not to knock another man's star, but eerily reminiscent of the colours of the earlier 2015-2016 Mercedes Formula 1 cars, with that silver and turquoise reminiscent of the Petronas colours on there on that Aston Martin. But it is looking mighty for Tanguay. Not a lot of data to play with in regards to Tanguay himself. Was a new signing hailing from Canada in the number 30 Aston Martin, and he's joined right in time to see one of the best balance of performance packages for Aston Martin this season, finding themselves just a kilo ahead to find themselves the lightest in category for round 2 of the championship. So it's going to be mighty for them today, and we can see the hustle already up to 4th from 7th, putting himself ever closer to what seems like an almost unbreakable lead of the timing charts by Christian Lebay. That is not to detract from how close the rest of the grid is to one another. Getting a look there, Liam Bello and Richard Cecil are divided by only 1,000th of a second, if you can believe your eyes there. You can see further down as well, just outside of the top 10, Clinton Bourne off from Timo de Tosto on your screens here, who marks the back of that top 10 in the 58 Mercedes. Was a very exciting watch back in Laguna Seca round 1. They're divided by only 300ths of a second, so it is remarkably tight inside the top 10 and even outside of it. And I think the statistics often look a little bit more deceiving just because you've seen the gap mostly between first and second, and Christian Lebay is not looking to disappoint coming into today's round. He's 7/10ths ahead of any one driver on this track. In fact, the gap between himself and P2 is so large that if you were to take P2 and put 7/10ths on that, you would not find yourself without a car within that range until you reach down to 9th position. Actually 8th position there, just scraped. So in the gap between first and second, you could fit second through 7th. So that is remarkably quick. A 141.397, the fastest here in free practice. Now, we've seen that Lebay almost had his chances of a Grand Slam in round one, and I don't think he's looking to waste any further an opportunity here. The difference in strategy left him without his chance for a Grand Slam to kick off the season. And I know, oh, my steak is too juicy, my lobster is too buttery, so on and so forth. But really, you can tell he's already gunning for accolades well above the expectation heading into this season. With about 3.5 minutes left to go here in free practice, let's catch on board with some of the drivers kicking around on track at the moment. We'll try and catch on board, as a matter of fact, with Graham Green, who marks the last of the top 10 positions in the championship standings. Finished P10 with Porsche in the number 747 last round gone at Laguna Seca. It was definitely quite a mixed bag for Porsche and especially for Audi as well. Clinton Bourne, who sadly a no-show so far for this round, would have actually seen relatively beneficial balance of performance. 19 kilos would have been kicked off the R8. Sadly a no-show after last round, and maybe for good measure at the moment, because it was definitely quite a hair raiser for the Audi team. Definitely a result to forget. But hopefully we are to see Clinton Bourne again. We've just seen their times reeling in from Anthony Villorio. And we're happy to announce as well, we'll be working alongside Villorio and the High Caliber Community League. Oh my word, that is a gnarly crash by Villorio, but we'll stay on board on that discussion. We're happy to announce that we'll be working alongside Villorio and the High Caliber Community League for the opening round of their GT4 Challenge Series this Saturday at 2 p.m. BST. So we are very, very honoured to be taken on board by the HCCL team. It's going to be mighty, mighty fun. All the more reason to cover more GT4 racing here on TRTN, and we've been waiting long enough for our first opportunity, and now it seems to roll in like clockwork. Checking on board then with Badiali, who finds himself squeezed out of the top 3 positions after that last time by Villorio. Down through turn 16 he goes then. That BMW is looking poised. Despite 12 kilos whacked on in balance of performance, it does not seem to be slowing down the tenacity here by the Italian, making his way to the line. Sadly, not to an improvement this time around, but you can see how razor thin the margins have been so far, and this is only free practice, so bear in mind, still a 10-minute quali session yonder the horizon, and a 30-minute race following on top of that. Just under 2 minutes left to go then. Let's catch on board with some of the other drivers left on track. Here's the 2 Mercedes cars of Kevin Quain and Timo de Tosto. 9th and 10th separated by a single hundredth of a second there. 1.523 to 1.533 from pole position, or the fastest lap I should say, getting ahead of myself, for free practice. Now if we were to translate that into quali, yes, you would be looking at pole, and you can see how close things are, because only 4 yes, as a matter of fact, just checking that my eyes do not deceive, only 0.04 of a second away from Quain is Clinton Bourne, who has now moved to Chevrolet. So it actually didn't occur to me the first time that Clinton Bourne had moved away from the graces of Audi, but it seems to be a gamble worth taking, because he is very close right now on paper to being inside of that top 10. So that would be one to keep a close eye on. Clinton Bourne. Now, this was a move so shocking to us that we've actually failed to recognise that on the graphic system, so showing him with Audi. The Australian is looking poised here for better results after a round to forget, the season premiere at Laguna Seca. And with 2 smaller rounds on the charts here, it's definitely going to be more ample opportunity than ever. What a way to bring us into the double stint format than a track like Oulton Park. It has been a mighty impressive circuit to watch over the various series we've been covering here on TRTN, so this is no doubt not going to be an exception to that rule. Right at the trailing seconds then of free practice, we can see Clinton Bourne, and just up ahead of him there, the 747 down in 12th position. That's Graham Green on their way to the line with Porsche and Chevrolet. But a moment's call then from the start of our first qualifying sessions. We see a few drivers as well still yet to take the line there. And from 12th And that is a remarkable turnaround, must I say, by Mr. Clinton Bourne in the number 6 Chevrolet. Now up to 7th for the end of free practice. And bear in mind, only 700ths away from Karl Martel's position. And once more there, only 0.2 of a second away from the top 5. That marked by the number 30 Aston Martin of David Tanguay. So that is looking to be tantalisingly close come qualifying time. We see here John Prine heading to the checkered line here at the end of free practice. Takes his dive into the pit lane. The only driver then left to see the checkered line, currently residing in 4th at the end of free practice, Giovanni Badiali, who was 2nd place in round 1, is still gunning for his opportunity of a race win today. Bear in mind, we've got 2 opportunities and 2 times the qualifying sessions to play with as opposed to the round just gone. So it's going to be thoroughly exciting to cover here in a moment's time. We'll be the last to mark the end of free practice then and mark the start of our qualifying session. So we wait here with bated breath. Only 5 thousandths to clear to the time of Byron Forrest and put himself in the top 3 at the end of free practice. And this is any precedent as ever to watch what the BMW is capable of heading into quali today. So down to the line, we'll have to figure out where Badiali placed at the end of this. We'll catch up with that in a moment's time then. So it's going to be all hands on deck here, full thunder at the end of free practice and into quali. And we can see there that sadly it was not an improvement in the books there for Badiali. We saw a little bit of a inkling of oversteer from the BMW in the trailing corners of that last lap just gone. But let's get a look on board with the driver leading us down into turn 3 at Cascades. It's Byron Forrest in the 824. So not a lot of time to play with here, and you can see already it is a very, very lively state of affairs here at Oulton Park as we go rocketing down through the island bend at turn 4. And looking behind, you can see it's a stampede here of cars. Getting a look with Liam Bellow's perspective, he's swerving on his way down Lakeside. Up ahead of him there is Kevin Quain, and not too far from his view appears to be, yes, Graham Green, and right behind him, Alex Albert. See Richard Cecil also somewhere amongst the crowd between Villorio and Quain. Green there we saw in the rear view mirror of Liam Bellow. Behind him, Alex Albert and Timo de Tosto. So let's get on board with Byron Forrest. He makes his way to Hislops at turns 10 and 11. So Byron Forrest looking to be our benchmark time of the day. We'll be on to his flying lap in but a moment's time here. We stay on board with the 824 as we discuss those qualifying predictions. Now, I've been thoroughly looking forward to being able to finally dig my claws into this data here, as it is looking very, very close indeed. Now, taking a look here, Christian Lebay, unsurprisingly, back to pole position with a 141.245, but get a gander behind him because it is incredibly close from second backwards. David Tanguay, the new signing in the number 30, is predicted on a front row start, so this is unprecedented information to play with here from the new Canadian on the block. The Aston Martin predicted at a front row with a 142.230. That's only 507 thousandths ahead of the car behind him. And on our screen to the moment, Byron Forrest, who himself is predicted at 3rd place. A 142.287 was the best time available on Simbot. And then in Kevin Quain's position, he's in 4th behind Forrest and by only about 0.3 of a second. Then only about 400ths from him is Liam Bellow to mark the end of that top 5. Then towards the back of our predicted top 10, Karl Martel with a 142.622. It's only 200ths, actually less so if you consider that it's 13 thousandths of a second between himself and Bellow. So the Chevrolets are incredibly close here, and that's no too different the story when you get further behind Martel, because you can see by only about a tenth and 500ths there is Alex Albert in 7th position. Anthony Villorio behind them with BMW, not too far off, actually just less than a tenth of a second between himself and Albert. Richard Cecil in 9th place with a 143.037. That's only about just under 0.3 of a second there from Villorio, and Andrew Veldkamp at the back of the top 10 by only 0.2 of a second to 9th. That goes quite a distance there. Bear in mind, with 2 qualifying sessions to demonstrate just how close things ought to be by the end of the opening 10 minutes of quali. So just scraping before that halfway mark here, Byron Forrest is about to take the benchmark time. He's only got a few more corners to clear, and it's looked like an already very spry opening lap by the American talent in the 824 Porsche. Now, we thought Porsche, looking back to that balance of performance, would be down and out of things, but they look very, very fleet of foot here for the opening couple of laps. 16 kilos may not be enough to tether Byron Forrest to the back of the field, as it's looking like a very strong start to qualifying today. Getting to the line, Byron Forrest on 142.690. Behind him, the 119 of Christian Lebay shows us what for 142.227 by Chevrolet's finest. The number 3 then to the line, that's Gabriel Gaudreau. sadly doesn't set a valid time. The number 41 of Vilorio just about to cross the line here, goes third fastest. Then by provisional standpoint, Kevin Quain joins up behind him now for fourth, 1.5 seconds off the beat, and he's immediately usurped for position by Liam Bello and Graham Green, fourth and fifth fastest. The pair of them, though, are liable to lose out some positions here. As coming up the order, we already see Alex Albert's cross the line behind them. Timo de Tosto having a bit of a blinder there in the opening flying lap. He's 4.7 seconds off. That is quite erroneous results by de Tosto, but here is what we were talking about. Tanguay and then Badiali, a twofer there, a double hit combo by Aston Martin and BMW to kick off the start of the first of two qualifying sessions today, as they put themselves within 0.3 of a second apiece there to the leading pole position time by Christian Lebay. But if we know anything about Lebay, we know that it's not one and done for the 119. He's always got more in the back pocket for every single lap, and when you've just thought you've cleared the gap, here's 2 to 3 more tenths for you to play with. Thank you very much. So Badiali incredibly close to kick things off, just over 1/10 of a second away, and David Tanguay on his first race here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series by Competizione Performance League, powered by Malois Transport and AssurAction Transport Expert. I must say that is a very remarkable opener. And if that's the precedent to carry forward, do keep a close eye on these three then, marking our podium positions for the race start. Lebay, Badiali and Tanguay could be a story to remember today here in Oulton Park, and there'll be 2 opportunities to see what that looks like with 2 available rounds, or 2 available races, I should say, coming into today's round. Now, looking away from the new drivers, going back to those regs, we'll be in Quali 1 right now for 10 minutes, then Race 1 for 30, then immediately into Quali 2 for another 10 minutes, and then into Race 2 for another 30 to bring us to the end of our broadcast day today. And what a way that has been to start off the qualifying session today. We'll have to bring away those timers there, as they do actually have a pretty nasty habit of resetting, so that'll be back with us in a moment's time. We're still on board with Tanguay. As we see, the gap has yet to open up for Lebay. That last lap didn't do much to open the gap up to Badiali or Tanguay, so they still have plenty of opportunities here. Tanguay to the line and doesn't find the improvement, but Badiali does, and he's now tantalizingly close to that leading time. Just under 4 minutes left to go. The timer will join us once more when we hit the 3-minute mark. So apologies for that there. It's actually a principal rule that we keep breaking here, not to go anywhere else besides the mainstream footage, as the timer we use is obviously an open source plugin and it's not very reliable. The moment you cut away from the scene, it has a habit of resetting itself. So that'll resume at the 3-minute mark, and then I'll be back up and running for the next 10-minute quali session after today's 30-minute race. So we'll keep you updated until that timer arrives. So 3 minutes, 20 seconds left to go. And Karl Martel, must I say, has suddenly leaped expectations there ahead of Lebay, in amongst the confusion there surrounding the timing equipment, and has taken the fastest time of today's first qualifying session. And there the timers do return to us. 3 minutes left to go. So we are amongst the last of our flying laps here in Quali 1. And rather unsurprisingly, here's Christian Lebay back to the leading position. It really doesn't seem to be a case that anyone else can have a go at pole position besides Lebay here. It's a totally dominant performance by the 119 Chevrolet. But what if we weren't a little bit confused there, seeing that yes, a Chevrolet atop the timing charts, but Karl Martel usurping the time by 0.2 of a second. Now that's swung 4 tenths in the opposite direction now, as Lebay's back up by the very same 2 tenths that he was behind. So make sense of that and wrap your head around that set of logic. Byron Forrest in third then, up and ahead of Badiali and Tanguay. Neither of them finding improvements on the last lap to usurp position. Anthony Vilorio in 6th, heading his way to the checkered line. Does he find an improvement for the top 5? Has to find 0.2 of a second to do so. Not this time around. Timo de Tosto on his way out of turn 4 to turn 5 at the moment makes 7th position. Graham Green's in the pit lane, and Liam Bello is in 9th place on his way, actually, as we speak here, down towards Britain's chicane at turns 7, 8 and 9. Kevin Quain just on his way up through the hilltop straight to his lops. Clinton Borner, we saw a very remarkable turnaround time at the end of free practice. Right now resides just outside of that top 10 by 100th of a second to Kevin Quain's time there. That goes to show how close the margins are here. When you take away the big 3 at the top of the timing charts, it is a very, very close qualifying. With about a minute and a half left to go. We're amongst the final laps we'll see today. Alex Albert resides in the pit lane at the end of Quali 1 today for 12th position on the race start for race 1 of 2 today. Andrew Veldkamp in 13th at the moment, still out on track, just on his way through Knickerbrook Curve at turn 12. John Prine on his way through Britain's having a bit of trouble there in the 22. Having to cut the chicane there. Fortunately, I think he's just got enough time for one more lap here at Oulton Park. Christophe Dupuis in 15th, Gabriel Gaudreau in 16th, Richard Cecil not having the best of quali days right now. He's got an erroneous time, 17.8 seconds from pole position. Now, we were seeing higher predictions for the Alpine, so I think it may have to be a very, very desperate one-shot quali here for Richard Cecil, all or nothing, or he'll be starting at the back for race 1 of 2. Just see here, to the line goes Badiali. And Tanguay is the one that leapfrogs the pair of both him and Byron Forrest for the front of that second row, putting himself within just about 10th and 200ths of a second to the front row of Karl Martel and Christian Lebay. Another front engine dominated track perhaps then here in GT4. Only 20 seconds left to go. We're amongst the last of our laps here in quali 1 of 2 today. Lebay is out on track, so if that gap looked maybe a little too close for you, don't worry, because it seems that Lebay's got a little bit more magic in the back pocket here for the 119's performance today, looking at another resounding pole position. Now, he's led all the way through free practice. He's led all the way through qualifying here, save for that one startling sight there of a Chevrolet not adorned by the 119 atop the timing charts there. A very remarkable time, though, nonetheless, by Karl Martel. Very, very close eye there on him at the end of this qualifying session. We still have a few drivers left to try their last swing here for quali 1 of 2. Among them, David Tanguay on his first race here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America. We have seen here Badiali's pulled it into the pits, so he'll be starting at the best of things today for race 1 of 2 in the top 5 and behind Byron Forrest. We'll get a full look at that grid in a moment's time then. David Tanguay, we're watching on board with at the moment. Just up ahead of him is the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp, fellow American there with front engine machinery and an AMG V8 under the bonnet, as that's the M178 up ahead of him, and he's in the M177 engine on the V8 Vantage by Aston Martin. A remarkable sports car indeed. So Veldkamp to the line from 14th. We're watching here with Tanguay. He pulls it into the pits though here at the end of quali. One more time to the line. It's from Anthony Villorio's point of view as he makes his way out of turn 16 at Lodge, up through turn 17 at Deer Leap. Can the McLaren knock his way into the top 5? Only just outside there, and you can see how close the margins were at the end of quali 1. What a remarkable show of force by Chevrolet, though. A 1-2 in quali 1 by Lebay and Martel. More onto that grid in a moment's time. Whilst we've got the opportunity, though, let's discuss a very healthy dose of news for this broadcast evening. Now, it is very rare that we have a stacked out news roster, and we've got quite a lot to discuss here before we get on to the discussion of our first of 2 grids here for race 1 of 2 today and round 2 of the championship. And our first bit of news, of course, is hot off the press here. Cadillac has finally revealed its lineup for Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez's return to Formula 1 in 2026. The two will mark the first lineup for Cadillac, and there have been so much rumor and speculation. Pretty much every sign had pointed in this direction, and now Cadillac has finally given us the green light here on speculation and has given us the word these two are going to be racing from 2026 onwards. In local news over on NLRL, Cas van Veltsen's victory at round 5 race 1 has been nullified. He was given a 10-second penalty for his bump and run against Melvin Milliston, and it marks the first time a Belgian driver has won in the Sunday League, as Axel Cassier was given the win by proxy. The Belgian moving up to first place, with Van Veltsen relegated to 3rd, Milliston up to 2nd then in those final set of results. In automotive news, Nissan rolls its final GTR out of the factory, marking the end of one of history's most iconic sports cars. Nissan, though, has clarified that it's not goodbye forever, just for the time being. So fingers crossed that one day we could see the return of the iconic GTR. And our last bit of news then comes from the world of gaming, as the iRacing developers have announced their endeavours to produce an IndyCar game for 2026. Not only will it be featuring a lot of the groundwork and content already established in iRacing, with integration right now looking to be built in for the modern lineup of Indy cars, as well as Indy Next, which is being introduced into iRacing in a few weeks' time. But also, is going to be releasing on PC and console, much like their slated NASCAR game, also set to release in 2026. It is looking to be a very, very wonderful time coming up in 2026 to be a console sim racer, as not only are we seeing 2 racing games coming out of iRacing's developers' quarters, we're also seeing the console release speculated right now for Le Mans Ultimate. So it's looking very fantastic in the world of gaming. So, with a minute and a half before the start of Race 1's formation lap here, let's get a look at the first of our 2 grids today. Christian Lebay lines up on pole position as ever, but joining him on the front row here is another Chevrolet, the number 99 of Karl Martel. David Tanguay makes the 3rd position on the track, marking up the start of that 2nd row. On debut is a remarkable show of force from Aston Martin. Right alongside him then, Byron Forrest on that 2nd row in 4th place. Behind him on the 3rd row in 5th place is Badiali and Villorio to make 5th and 6th position. Richard Cecil in 7th with Timodo Tosto in 8th position. Rounding out the top 10, Liam Bello in 9th and Kevin Quain in 10th. Graham Green in 11th and Clinton Bourne in 12th. Alex Albert in 13th and Andrew Velkamp in 14th. Rounding out the top 15, John Prine in the number 22 Chevrolet. The number 39 of Christophe Dupois shares the row with him in 16th, and Gabriel Gaudreau lines up at the back in the number 3 Mercedes AMG. So a very solid qualifying session indeed to bring us in the first of 2 races today in round 2 of the championship. And now we are but a moment away from the start of the first of our formation laps, courtesy of Christian Lebay and Karl Martel. Leading the charge then on that front row, a total lockout for Chevrolet. And with favourable conditions on display at the moment for 30 minutes of racing today, no current threat of rainfall here in Oulton Park. So we wait here for the signal for Lebay to begin the formation lap here. So beginning that charge away, the 119 on another dominant pole position will be gunning for another easy getaway down into turn 2 here, or turn 1, sorry, my mistake, at the Old Hall corner. Technically turn 2 if you were starting further back, as your first corner would have been the Deer Leap. No, this is turn 1 at Old Hall corner. So looking for an easy getaway here as we make our way down to the Avenue. We've seen how tense things can get in this section of the track, especially heading down into Denton's Cascades, Lakeside and Island Bend in the opening sector. Very little respite here from Oulton Park, very little runoff to play with. Once you're on the grass, you can consider yourself a passenger in most regards, and you really do have to pray you can keep it out of the tyre wall. Now, we've seen even before that point things can get gnarly. We saw out of Villorio not too long ago, as a matter of fact, getting a look back on the instant replay. This was from the number 41, coming out of turn 1 and running a cropper there. So there is quite a lot of ample danger with very little available runoff on either side of it here at Oulton Park. Much like many historic MSV circuits, there is much in the way of car regainability. Once you're off that track, believe me, you're off. This is going to be an area of the track as well of quite heavy contention heading into Britain's. Now, we've seen drivers already have to cut this section of the track. Now, could we be considering anyone being so daring and ambitious as to go too wide in this section? I would hope not, but on the account that they do, someone is going to have to cut that chicane and penalties could be dished out. So it's a very sketchy section of the track here, and a lot of Oulton Park, much like Brands Hatch, is a game of following, even for the smaller GT4s, and especially when you consider the front row is occupied right now by the juggernauts of GT4 on a set, of course, of Competizione, the monstrously large Chevrolet Camaros. It is not going to be an easy wall to climb over for anyone else behind them, especially if you're in the perspective of David Tanguay in that Aston Martin. Getting a look from over the rear view of the number 99 of Karl Martel on that front row, you can see that the Goliaths of the front row are marked by a significant crowd of Davids at their rear. The much smaller cars, by comparison to the large Chevrolets, are going to have quite a hard time finding the gap to squeeze between the 99 and the 119. As we catch back on board then with Christian Lebay as we begin the formation process here. So 17 cars in today's race. That'll be 8 on one side, 9 on the other. Right now leading the charge from the inside on pole position to mark that front row. Christian Lebay on pole again. Can he elevate this to a second win in the row here? In a row, I should say, here in the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, powered by Malois Transport and AssurAction Transport Expert, and live exclusively on TRTN, as we are but a moment away then for the start of race 1 of 2 today. Double trouble here in Oulton Park, and for the first 30 minutes, we are but moments away, and we are green and racing here in Oulton Park. I said moments away there. What on earth does that mean? Down into turn 1 we go then from the two Chevrolets, already bolting away. Looking further behind them as there's a bit of a squeeze there. Nearly 3 abreast between Bellows, Cecil and De Tosto. Looking further down the order, we can see from the perspective there, passed through Velorio and Badiali. We'll want to try and get a look here towards the back of the field. We see De Tosto side by side with Kevin Quain. A bit of a squeeze there between the two Mercs, but De Tosto emerges up into 8th position there on his way out through turn 3 at Cascades. You can see, though, charging right to the back end of Quain. That is the number 747, the bronze Porsche there of Graham Green. We can see just scooting its way around. Getting back on board with the view here of the leading cars. See if we can catch on board LeBay then from Martel, Tanguay, Badiali and Forrest to round out that top 5. And see here from Liam Bellows' point of view, Richard Cecil's had an absolute blinder here for the race start. That Alpine swallowed up by the masses here of McLaren and Chevrolet, but having to cut the corner already here through Hislops for the first time. The number 101 of Liam Bellow drops position to both Mercedes cars from De Tosto and Quain by turn 12 there. Not the best start for Bellow, but plenty of time here for him to pick up the pieces and run with it. Martel in second place. Watches there as the 119 starts to peel away. That gap now half a second jumps up to 0.6 of a second. Meanwhile, Tanguay is slowly got Martel on the line and is reeling in that Chevrolet. We could be seeing an imminent fight for second place on our hands then between Tanguay and Martel, but we'll follow on that in a few laps time. We watch here. Here's Christian LeBay leading that charge already, having pulled nearly a second from the race start there. That is a remarkable getaway by the 119 Chevrolet. Speaking of Chevrolets, here's Clinton Bourne, a very distinct Chevrolet there amongst a crowd of grey, black and red Malois Racing coloured Chevrolet Camaros here with the green and black of the number 6. Clinton Bourne in hot pursuit of John Prine for 13th position on our way through turn 2. Out through Denton's, then to Cascades. See behind him as well, the white and blue new colours for the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp. Right now, no imminent threat of a fight up front. We'll get a double check in on that as we see Richard Cecil slowly being caught up by the tide of Mercedes cars at his rear quarter there. Timo De Tosto already up a few positions from race start. Will not be arguing with where he's at the moment. In through Britain's, we can see synchronized motion here between a greater majority of the drivers. We saw one of the bollards got kicked up firmly into the air, and there it is, comes crashing down to the ground by the side of the Alpine on our way down towards Hislops. Getting a look here, Graham Green just outside of that top 10 is being caught up by the 36 of Alex Albert. More dust kicked up in the face there only can indicate the worst for the cars up ahead. Speaking of Porsches, here's Byron Forrest. Had a solid start to today's race here, but is losing steam to the top 4 ahead of him. Doing the best that he can with less than beneficial balance of performance on the 824 Porsche, is still looking for another top 5 finish today. Bear in mind, this is one of 2 races. We'll have another qualifying session coming up after the next 26 minutes of racing. Right now, he's having to keep his eyes on the road here and trying not to think too much about the approach of the number 41 McLaren of Anthony Velorio behind him. That is definitely going to be pressing on his mind for some time here. We see Graham Green and Alex Albert getting closer and closer to a fight. Albert angling his way to the inside. Can he dare to go for a move from that far back? Just can't find the space for it. He's back in a single file. We can see in the background as well, John Prine and Clinton Bourne could be getting into arms in a moment's time on our way through Denton's at turn 2. Looking around the field, Richard Cecil now having clawed his way toward Velorio, and I think that's because Velorio's found himself the victim here of a bit of a long-winded concertina effect. The longer that he waits around behind Byron Forrest, the closer that drivers like Cecil and De Tosto can get to him. You can see in the background, even closer to one another right now, appears to be Kevin Quain and Liam Bellow. We're watching with Bellow's perspective as we go rocketing down into Britain's chicane. You can see just how tight it is here in Sector 2 from the perspective of the monstrously large Chevrolets. Even for the Mercedes cars, the more petite of the sort here, and even up ahead there with the Alpine, it is still a very claustrophobic section of the track. Very little respite on either side of it. Very easy to invalidate and even easier to pick up penalties. You can see trying to religiously avoid the grass here, knowing that one blade could upset the balance on the 101. Liam Bellow's playing things hesitantly there and is losing time. Yellow flags are out for Andrew Veldkamp in the number 616. Into trouble there at Hislops at turn 11. He's back going on track, though, with no significant damage. Save for the fact now, a bit of a hurt result as he's down in 17th position. Kevin Quain in hot pursuit right now of Timo de Tosto. We could be looking here at the fight for 8th position. We'll stay on board with Quain as he's right now the man in the middle. The Chevrolet bearing down on him of Liam Bellow from 10th position. He finds himself in both defensive 9th and attack for 8th. So plenty to do in the regards of multitasking. We also have another yellow flag, this time for the 22. Yes, so the 22 here, and that's John Prine in trouble this time out of turn 16. So 2 drivers in trouble in the span of the same sector for the second lap of racing. It is not looking particularly grand in that final. Let's try and catch back on board, though, with Kevin Quain. We saw he was right close to the other Mercedes there, the 58 in front of him, the yellow and grey 58 Mercedes of Timo de Tosto. Top 5 visitor in the last round just gone, but running things a little bit wide through Shell Oils. As a matter of fact, it's the Chevrolet behind them that finds the best line through. Another yellow flag here. So we're just dropping like flies over the second lap gone. This time it's the 747 in trouble. If we can try and catch on board wherever the 747 may be at this time. Again, wouldn't be a ACC stream without this horrific menu navigation, but we can see from the perspective of John Prine, there's the 747. Now having just got going, I believe there may have been a spin then out through turn 4 at the island bend just before Shell Oils at turn 5 for Graham Green, who brought that yellow flag out. And that's our 3rd yellow flag in under 5 minutes. So that's a bit of a depressing sight. You can see as well, in the time that we cut away from them, we sadly missed out on what appeared to be a move there. But oh my goodness, we've just caught the move of a lifetime up for second place there by David Tangway. So better late than never, as we were scrambling around to figure out what was going on next. Now Karl Martel loses out position and David Tangway's up to second. Giovanni Badiali is hunting for the last of those podium positions, right now coveted by the 99. The 998's up on the inside and it looks like a big runoff for the BMW out through turn 1. Here comes Byron Forrest, though. Do not sleep on Porsche's performance today, as rocketing his way through comes Byron Forrest. Can he hold it, though, through turn 3 at Cascades? Do not rule out the number 824. That was a monstrous send on the exit of turn 1. Right now, Tangway's up to second. We just caught that move. And now we're seeing the proceedings here for a full-fledged offensive for 3rd place here in the court of Martel and Forrest. Bear in mind, 2 drivers on the same team here, the Malois racing team. But as we explained back in Laguna Seca, there's no auspice of a team's championship. So, yeah, they share a badge, but they do not share a championship besides that driver's one. So they can feel free to fight one another here. All it's going to do is hurt the team dynamic. And I'm sure these two don't mind a spot of sparring, especially after that moving defeat by the Aston Martin of David Tangway, now closest to the front of that field. But speaking of the front of that field, Christian Lepay has really opened the taps up since we last saw him. He's now nearly 6 seconds up the road from Martel. See, Forrest is dropping back. So what we were trying to catch earlier is that Quain has now dropped behind Bellow. Bellow takes the role of the man in the middle now, hunting down Timo de Tosto for 8th position. But we very nearly missed out on the move of a century there by David Tangway. On debut, remind you, as well, for round 2, race 1. In the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America series here on Competizione Performance League. Right now, that last lap by Lebay, 142.467 and 142.590. So not fast enough right now to catch that leading Chevrolet, but he can definitely give it a very good go. We can see in the background there, looks to be side-by-side action between Byron Forrest and Giovanni Badiali. Now, this is in that fight for 4th position. We were talking before on that full-fledged fight for 3rd. I think we're seeing a much more rare fight for 4th position. Let's stay on board here with Byron Forrest leading that charge, and on the defensive right now for Porsche. Is right behind him. The McLaren and the BMW are in hot pursuit down into turn 4. Badiali and Velorio look to be getting into a battle with one another right now for 5th position. All of this, though, is functionally in the fight for 4th. You can see joining right up to the back of them is Timo de Tosto and Richard Cecil. The Alpine and the Mercedes joining the fight from 7th and 8th position as we head into Britain's. You can see an incredibly close train of cars. As a matter of fact, we may have to try and catch on board with Richard Cecil here as he finds himself ever closer to the rear quarter of Anthony Villorio. But back on board for a moment here with Byron Forrest back into that fight for 4th position. Do not go anywhere here in the court of the 824, because right behind him is Giovanni Baddiali in hot pursuit in that BMW. So there's a lot to process here in the opening 10 minutes of racing, and thank God we very nearly missed the entire... Well, don't thank God that we very nearly missed the entire... Thank God we caught it, because we otherwise would have missed what was a resounding move for 2nd place there by David Tanguay. We're watching the fight for the positions that remain here just outside of the podium. Byron Forrest is for love nor money holding on to 4th position with every fibre of his being there in the Porsche. The BMW is not relenting one bit. Baddiali was 2nd place in round 1. He is looking for another visit to the podium. And right now, the major hurdle in his way before he can take the fight to the 99 Chevrolet of Karl Martel is this man here, Byron Forrest, who has had a defensive masterclass. We saw his move up and ahead. Very nearly had his chances for 3rd. Right now, it's dropped back in behind Martel and is doing a royal service to his fellow Malois Racing teammates in holding off Baddiali's offensive here. Down into turn 4 we go. Right now, that battle for 4th just simmering down a tad as we can see things are hotting up behind. Let's see if we can catch on board with one driver right up the backside here of Anthony Villorio, and that is Richard Cecil with Alpine. He's right caught in the middle of a fight for 6th position. Also, is going to have to start considering his odds to fight for 7th. We'll stay on board that fight for 6th from the perspective of Richard Cecil. You can see in a straight line he's got nothing against that McLaren, but it's maneuverability that's the modus operandi of Alpine here in this championship. You can see just how pokey it is in through his lops. He's able to give it so much more send through the corners, but don't skip out on the Mercedes because Timo de Tosto is right with him here. We are looking now more at that fight for 7th for Richard Cecil as he's having to defend the position he's held on to here from the race start. 18 minutes left to go, so we're approaching the halfway mark, and of course no mandated pit stop right now, but what a difference in cornering capacity between Mercedes and Alpine. Bear in mind, like Porsche, rear-engined, and unlike Porsche, a much smaller engine. So there's not the negative side effects of the rear-engine platform, really only seemingly, by contrast, the benefits of it, and that's that extra maneuverability and stopping power into the corners that gives the Alpine its signature poke. Catch up with Richard Cecil in a moment's time. We will see him rocketing out, so we'll stay on board with him as it looks to have hot up for Anthony Villorio after a bit of a poor exit of turn 1 has brought him back into the stead here for the fight of 6th position with Cecil and Baddiali. Now on the exit of Cascades at turn 3. We are now looking at that fight for 6th. David and Goliath here, McLaren versus Alpine. What can Richard Cecil do? Caught right in the middle of things here. He's got a Mercedes breathing down his neck. He's got a McLaren taunting him from the position ahead. He knows in the corners he can have Villorio for breakfast. But in those straights, that titular 1.8 litre is just not enough for what he needs. You can see it demonstrated firsthand here with just how much he's able to give the car some proper beans through the 2 chicanes, but then it's separated here by this very short straight up through Hilltop. And it's where the Mercedes of De Tosto can reel him in, and it's where Villorio can get a little bit of breathing space. As you can see, he's right with him there by the time we get to Knickerbrook at turn 12. We do have yellow flags out. We can see that further down the order right now. It's for the number 22 and the number 39. So we'll cut away here from Richard Cecil. We try and inspect what happened here. It was the 2 Chevrolets of John Prine and Christophe Dupois down at turn 5 at the Shell Oils corner. That's back into green flag conditions for the time being as we get towards the round midway. Watching here with Christian Lebay. He's opened the taps up now to a 6.2 second lead over David Tanguay's Aston Martin. Chevrolet looking for another victory here, 2 in a row, to make that first 2 races of the season. Karl Martel, who started from 2nd place, now finds himself down in 3rd, and with the imminent approach of Byron Forrest on his tail in 4th position. Looking further down the order through 5th to 6th, we have Baddiali, Villorio, Cecil, De Tosto, and on our screens at the moment, the 101 of Liam Bello, who's only 0.3 of a second, make it 0.2 of a second to the Mercedes in front of him. So he's caught right back up after his falters there at the start of the race. and could be right now looking at a fight for 8th position. We'll stay on board with Bello just for the time being. We can see up ahead that the fight of Cecil v Valorio now 0.6 of a second as we enter Britain's. Staying here with Bello. This is in that fight for 8th position against Timo de Tosto in the 58. Down into Hislops we go then, turns 10 and 11, then to turn 12. You can see just how close things are getting for the Alpine ahead. So we will be checking in with Richard Cecil and Anthony Valorio in a moment's time. That gap now just hovering around half a second. We may not actually have to, because we can see that De Tosto and Bello are catching up to the Alpine. So we could be looking functionally at that fight for 7th. Right now stands as the fight for 8th between these two, but that is quickly to be joined by present company on our screens here. It's not too far up the road whatsoever was that fight we were watching earlier on for 6th place. And now it looks like the worlds are about to collide, as this is now a 3-way fight for 7th position, with Richard Cecil has dropped behind into the jaws here, the Mercedes and Chevrolet warring for 8th. Watching with Bello then, you can see up ahead De Tosto is sizing Cecil up for a position here. 58 versus the 5. The 101, a passive observer for the time being, waiting for his opportunity to strike. On our way through turn 2, we go then at Denton's, then to turn 3. 14 minutes left to go. We can see as well further up the order that Badiali and Forrest could be getting into a scrap at a moment's time there. Those two very close to one another as they make their way from turn 4, which we see these drivers just exit now from Leon Bello's perspective. Down into Britain's we go then, turn 7, 8 and 9. You can see that the mid and rear engine car up ahead, the McLaren and the Alpine, are able to just get such a gap away from the front engine giants at Mercedes and Chevrolet. Right now, that whole section of the track, these two chicanes here, Britain's and Hislops, just before turn 12, is acting as this sort of buffer zone, this dividing point between mid and front engine here toward the back of the top 10. Still watching that fight. This has actually bled back into the fight for 8 for now, as Richard Cecil has been able to force just enough of a gap in the last couple of sectors there away from Timo de Tosto to hold on to 7th for the time being, and moreover he himself is sizing up Valorio ahead. And that McLaren, that lime green McLaren, just making its way from turn 16 to 17 there at the foreground for 6th place. 12 minutes left to go then in today's race. Nothing too major then up on the front row, bar that move from earlier on by David Tanguay to take 2nd place off of Carl Martel, but not much has occurred since here. It has been a bit of a lonely trip at the top for the top 3. That could be interrupted soon. We can see that the 998 and the 824 of Battiali and Forrest are gaining on Martel, so there could be a fight for a podium here in race 1 of 2. Right now, still watching that fight for 8th between De Tosto and Bello. Catch up with these two in a moment's time. Taking a look around the field, here is that coveted fight between Badiali and Forrest that we've been suggesting is going on in the background. This right now occurs for that fight of 4th position. We're watching the attacking car's perspective here. Giovanni Badiali, the solitary BMW of the championship, looks to make it 2 abreast. Down into Hislops at turn 10, has his way to the inside at turn 11, but it's too far away. Back onto the racing line, the pair of them go. A little bit of theatrics there down at turns 10, 11 and 12. At Hislops and Knickerbrook corner. Now on our way through Druids up to the Warwick Bridge. Badiali has got straight line speed by the fistful here on that Porsche. Watching from Badiali's perspective, the ultra rare sight of the inside of an M4 GT3 here on ACC. It's not a car we often get the pleasure of seeing. But Badiali has really had this machine raked in, and we saw it over the last round in Laguna Seca. He was able to take home 2nd place there, best of the rest, ahead of excuse me, ahead of Anthony Valorio and Byron Forrest inside that top 4. We can see that this battle is still rearing up between the pair of them. Forrest is losing steam here to Martel, who himself is losing steam to Tanguay, who himself right now is continuing to lose steam from Le Bay. We do have a yellow flag, or had a yellow flag. That was through Druids for the number 3 at the time of recording. That has now cleared itself before turn 16. So out through turn 5 we go again. Badiali from Forrest. Forrest from Badiali, I should say. You can see Martel has dropped behind there. He is still very well within reach, and so too is the story of quite a few chartered battles we've been watching over the course of the last 5 minutes. You can see further down the order that Bello and De Tosto have spread apart. It's now the story of Richard Cecil versus Timo De Tosto, so that is going to be one to watch in a moment's time. We're still watching the lead of that fight as they get ever closer to a potential fight for the last of those podium positions. You can see that gap is really not too far between Forrest and Martel, about 4 to 5 car lengths there-ish. Taking a bit of a rough guess of that. Badiali still very, very close with 0.4 of a second between himself and the Porsche, but cornering is just not something he's able to give anywhere near the same capacity as the cars around him. The Porsche and the McLaren have got him pitched in the corners, but the BMW's got them pitched in the straights. So who comes out on top here in what looks to be Three's company with the introduction of the number 41 of Anthony Valorio? But it's a drive-through penalty for Badiali, so disastrous turn of events for the 998. Was in the stead to potentially fight for third today. We'll have to wait until race 2. For Anthony Valorio, it's a free position then to the back of the top 5. Now to be the next in line to charge on the 824. Let's get a look on board, though, with the positions there in behind. As we see now from Timo De Tosto's point of view, the fight for 6th place on our hands here on board the number 58 Mercedes. Down into turn 4 we go. Now this is quite an interesting sight, perhaps the epitome of why we love GT4 so much. Mercedes versus Chevrolet versus Renault Alpine. Out through turn 5 we go then. The Alpine, the better of the 3 for exit, but the Mercedes has caught right back up with just before the entry to Britain's chicane. Turn 7, 8 and 9, you can see the Alpine's got them pitched again in the manoeuvrability department. Every single time we hit a technical and tight section of the track, the Alpine is on rails by comparison to its bigger counterparts here at Mercedes and Chevrolet. And speaking of, we could be looking at that fight in a moment's time to bleed over into a fight for 7th, as Timo De Tosto may have to start taking up defensive moves here to keep Liam Bello at bay. Now on the exit of turn 12 and turn 13 at Clay Hill. De Tosto could be in a spot above it here. Liam Bello is not letting up, and this is a massively reinvigorated performance here from Bello. He's had to wind up quite a ways for this to happen here, just over halfway of the race before we've seen him come back in a competitive stead in the 101. We've seen a few suggestions that he could have had a go-forward position here and there, but then it falls apart for a few more laps. This is the most fired up we've seen him since the race starts, so definitely an opportunity for the fight of 7th position on our hands here as Richard Cecil takes leave of stage for 6th place right now. In that last lap was 3 tenths faster than either the Merc or the Chevrolet in the fight for 7th, right behind him. We do have another yellow flag. It was for, I believe, the 36 there. That'll be Alex Albert. We're staying on board that fight for 7th right now until that clears into green flags. Now bear in mind that's sector 3 that was under that condition, so here in sector 1 that doesn't apply. Into turn 4 we go then. De Tosto and Bello side by side. It's contact between the pair of them. Disastrous turn of events, no too dissimilar to what happened to Badiali, but this time minus any kind of scrupulations from penalties. This in turn happened on track. So De Tosto there, you can see side by side with Bello. A bit tough to pick that one apart, dare I say. Whose fault would you necessarily say that is? That is a bit of a tough one. Looks like a steward's inquiry is probably going to be the port of call here. De Tosto now down to 9th, and Clinton Bourne inside the top 10. So a massive turnaround for the former Audi talent there from Australia, Clinton Bourne, now in the top 10. Let's get a look then just over the halfway mark, actually towards the 3/4 mark of today's race 1 of 2. Bear in mind, don't go anywhere after the checkered flag. We'll be in for quali 2 and race 2 in a moment's time. Right now leading that charge then for the end of race 1 with 6 minutes left to go. Christian LeBay in the 119 Chevrolet has led every single lap here on what is looking to be a grand slam, but now therein lies the rule does it consider itself a Grand Slam for just race 1, as race 2 does not feature a free practice? What are going to be the regulations that define a Grand Slam for race 2? Is it just going to be quali in the race? I'm sure that is a conundrum there that Lebay is pondering from the front row, and by quite a healthy gap, as he finds himself several seconds up the road from the driver in second, and a real breakout entry to this championship. Had he entered in the round before, we could have definitely seen the championship fight go into his hands against Lebay, as opposed to that of Badiali's, and that is right now for David Tanguay with the number 30 Aston Martin. One of the best beneficial balance of performance packages for Aston Martin in this championship so far, and Tanguay has really took the baton and ran with it from the word go here. And bear in mind, another race still on the chart, so he's got an opportunity. If he can qualify higher in quali 2, I do not see it impossible that he could fight with Lebay for the leading position of race 2. But with 5 minutes left to go, he's in second. Martel's in third, and behind him looks to be the raging war for fourth, which has been held right now tooth and nail by Byron Forrest for another appearance inside the top 5, continuing a story of consistently solid performances in the 824 Cayman. Right behind him then, Anthony Valorio still inside the top 5 then with McLaren. Richard Cecil in 6th place, Liam Bello in 7th, Giovanni Badiali in 8th, Timo de Tosto in 9th position, and Clinton Bourne rounds out the top 10. Then Kevin Quain in 11th, Alex Albert in 12th. Gabriel Gaudreau started at the back and is up to 13th, up and ahead of fellow Mercedes Andrew Veldkamp. In the number 616, he makes 14th position. Graham Green at the back of the top 15 as he exits the pits there. Trouble for the 747. John Prine looks to be up the road then, so that will quickly update. Yes, so Green down to 16th. Then at the back of the field is Christophe Dupois. News from 6th place. Richard Cecil picks up a drive-through penalty, the second driver of today to do so, after Giovanni Badiali, who will retake the position then off of Cecil. 4 minutes left to go then, and we did say very easy to invalidate here at Oulton, even easier to pick up a penalty, and we've seen that now. Strikes back on the number 5 of Richard Cecil. We're watching here with Timo de Tosto, who sadly doesn't catch the Alpine, just escapes his sight there out through turn 2 at Denton's. Just checking in here at the back between the two warring Mercedes cars. I'm so used to saying Chevrolets. With the two Mercedes cars towards the back of the field. Andrew Veldkamp and Gabriel Gaudreau on their way through turn 16 and turn 17. I tell you, I am properly struggling for my English today. My sincerest apologies. Down into turn 1 then at Old Hall. Dent cut away from that there as things are looking to get close here between Veldkamp and Gaudreau. Down into turn 3 we go. Hesitation from the number 3. Only met there by hesitation from the 616. They stay instead of one another. And see further down the line, the number 39 of Christophe Dupois appears to have damage on his Chevrolet. He's down in 17th right now. We're watching with Byron Forrest. Still holds on to 4th place. Carl Martel only 1.1 seconds up the road from him. So if he can really pull it out of the hat here, if he can close the gap down there, could be that discussion of Byron Forrest on the podium here for race 1 of 2. That is not out of the realm of possibility, but it's going to take a bit of a wing and a prayer here to put that Porsche in that conversation, as he's 800ths away on that last lap just gone. Richard Cecil, despite that drive-through penalty, only drops 2 positions from 6th to 8th. So not the worst result in the world here for Alpine. Of course, lamenting on what thoughts it could have been here for race 1. It is still a solid points position to walk away with for Richard Cecil, and that will continue to keep him inside the top 10 here in the championship standings. 2 minutes left to go then. We're amongst the final laps here in race 1 at Oulton Park. Then we'll be on to the discussion of Quali 2 and Race 2 in a moment's time. Liam Bello up to 6th then. That's a real turnaround for Bello. He was caught up in that incident earlier. To bring that up was the incident between himself and Timo de Tosto. This was down at turn 4 only a few laps ago. That collision between the pair of them, still undecided from our point of view as to whose fault that specifically was. You can see there was the room, and then there was quite a severe bout of understeer from the Chevrolet. So personally, I'm not entirely sure, nor am I in the position to be judge, jury and executioner on the verdict as to who exactly was at fault. That's up for you in the chat and the steward's office to decide. That's not what I get paid to do here on TRTN. We're watching here with Liam Bello then. 6th place as we enter the final lap of today's race. just scraping outside of a top 5 there for another appearance by Chevrolet. That'll be only 2 Chevys in the top 5 at the end of race 1 today. Getting a look then as to where our nearest fights could be. Look no further than the 824 and the 41. Byron Forrest versus Anthony Valorio here at the end of race 1. This could go all the way to the line. Now, we are not strangers to the sight of a last lap jaunt here in the Competizione Performance League. We've seen quite a hefty handful already, courtesy of that opening round at Laguna Seca. Could we be seeing a little bit of that last lap magic here from Valorio in Oulton Park here? Taking a look around right now, the leading Chevrolet of Christian Lebay making his way down to Britain's chicane. Right in front of him there, one of the lapped Chevrolets. Believe that to be John Prine there, the number 22. Yes, as a matter of fact. We catch back on board with Valorio and Forrest. Valorio still behind, so we're on to that final lap right now. We already saw it announced earlier on, so this will be for the end of race 1. Don't go anywhere after that checkered flag, though, ladies and gents. We've still got another qualifying session and another race left to play for here in round 2 of the championship. We'll catch on board, though, with Christian Lebay, who right now looks to take it 2 on the trot. We'll watch with the 119 as he makes his way round Druids then. Up towards turn 16 at Deer Leap. Turn 16, sorry, at Lodge, and then turn 17 at Deer Leap. Without further ado, out through turn 16, on the rise of turn 17, the checkered flag flies in the face of the 119 for the second time in this championship. Christian Lebay wins race 1 of 2 today here at Oulton Park. What a result then by the 119, and taking it home for second place here on debut, David Tanguay in the number 30 Aston Martin on a resounding second place finish. Rounding out the last of those podium positions, then lamenting on what could have been a front row finish for Chevrolet, is Carl Martel in the 99. Byron Forrest fought it all the way to the line, and all the way to a razor-thin 10th of a second margin between himself and Anthony Valorio. They finished 4th and 5th respectively. Liam Bello to the line for 6th place. Giovanni Badiali takes it to the line for 7th, lamenting that drive-through penalty. Another driver feeling the very same sting here. Fights off for 8th position, right to the line. Richard Cecil takes home 8th for Alpine, and right on his trails is Timo de Tosto by 0.4 of a second. Rounding out the top 10 is Clinton Bourne on a remarkable turnaround since his departure from Audi Sport. Kevin Quain to the line from 11th place then. Alex Albert making his way out through turn 16, then to turn 17 to mark 12th position here. Gabriel Gaudreau and Andrew Veldkamp will be on their way in a moment's time here. We can see the 2 Mercedes cars just making their way up through Clay Hill and then over towards turn 14 on the rise here of turn 15 at Druids. See the Veldkamp up ahead of him there in 13th place. 2 Mercedes cars then towards the back of the field making their way to the line, finishing behind them for 15th, 16th and 17th, Prine, Green and Dupois. So they're watching Andrew Veldkamp to the line. Gabriel Gaudreau will finish behind him in 14th. Veldkamp to the line then for 13th. So your winner of race 1 of 2 today, Christian Lebay in the 119 Chevrolet, then David Tanguay on debut for Aston Martin, Carl Martel in 3rd with Chevrolet, Byron Forrest in 4th with Porsche, Anthony Valorio in 5th with McLaren. Then behind him, Liam Bello, Giovanni Badiali, Richard Cecil, Timo de Tosto and Clinton Bourne to mark the end of the top 10. Outside of the top 10 then, Quain, Albert, Veldkamp, Gaudreau, Prine, Green and Dupois from 11th to 17th. What a first race of 2 then, ladies and gents, and what a result to kick things off by Christian Lebay. Another dominant jaunt, and that will mark a first for Christian Lebay in this championship as a Grand Slam victory. Now, we're not sure what the regulations outline for race 2, as that technically is without a free practice session. Now, those of you may know, with the Grand Slam, it's to lead every practice session, every qualifying session, and every race. Does that apply across the board for just race 1, of which we've had free practice 1, and free practice 1 and quali 1? Or does that only carry for this first race, or is it going to carry for both? Well, we haven't much time to think about that as we're into Quali 2 right off the bat. I'd definitely say a much more brisk start then to Quali 2 than what we were expecting. Very nearly caught us off guard. We're back on board then with what is becoming the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series' early bird, the number 824 of Byron Forrest. He was out of the gates first for Quali 1, and that's no too different a story here for the 824 in Quali 2. On to a fresh track here in Oulton Park. On his way through turn 4, And he had a solid result there, taking home 4th. And he fought for that tooth and nail. You've really got to owe it to him there. That was a astounding performance by the Porsche to hold off against such uncertain odds. To bring back up that earlier mention of the balance of performance, Porsche find themselves the worst among it. 16 kilos added on to that Cayman for this round of the championship. So he has really, really played in the face of adversity there. Byron Forrest has done a bang-up job to be in 4th by the end of that race, especially considering how hot that position was at one point for him. And he had a very good go for 3rd. We saw that down through Cascades. Very nearly had his chances against Martel there. I'm not sure that he'll be too disheartened about missing out on the podium this time around, as he really gave it what for 4th, and you've got to hand it off to him there. It's definitely a notable mention in the discussion of a potential driver of the day. But bear in mind, we've still an extra race to go here, so we are trying to count that across both races now. We've done it before, where we've tried to go on a race by race basis with the the single races being counted by themselves. But I would say, looking overall, if he's able to replicate some of that magic, to capture some of that lightning in the bottle again, I do not see it impossible to suggest Byron Forrest as a potential driver of the day today. I would definitely also be putting in that discussion, if we can find him on track here as well, the Aston Martin. If we can find him here, David Tanguay. This is his debut drive here in this series, in the Pro-Am Cup America series on CPL. And he has already knocked it out of the park with a 2nd place finish. He was predicted at 2nd place in quali predictions, and he started race 1 in 3rd. So really, you've got to hand it off to him just as much so as you would for Byron Forrest, that these are remarkable performances. Diamonds in the rough there amongst the expected stream of results, really, for lack of better word. Get back on board with Byron Forrest. He's on his first flying lap of Quali 2. Now, to bring back up those qualifying predictions, bear in mind, these are technically a little bit outdated now, as they were for race 1, but I think the logic stands still, and we could even expect to see drivers shift up a few positions now that they are acclimatized to the track after the first 40 minutes or so on full flying lap form, considering Quali and the race. And that still puts Christian Lebay at pole position. Now, I do not see it impossible for the 119 to go tit for tat, double on the trot pole positions today. He's already secured what you would constitute that conditional Grand Slam. Led free practice, led the quali, led the race. Now he's got another quali and another race. Does that count as its own thing, or are we going for the super Grand Slam then in the court of Christian Lebay? Well, if the data is to give us any indication, and also the last 30 minutes to give you any indication, yes, he is looking for another pole position, and yes, he is capable of one. Is David Tanguay then capable of usurping the time set by Karl Martel for 2nd place? The data does suggest so. Byron Forrest then, our first benchmark time, immediately usurped by Richard Cecil by 0.02 of a second there. 1:43.037 was his predicted time. He's done a 1:43.102. So we are very close to reality here with those predicted times. Christian Lebay already kicking the gates open with a 1:41.295, 1.8 seconds faster than the time set by Richard Cecil. We can already see the times pouring in here. Liam Bello, 4th fastest, John Prime, 5th fastest, Andrew Velkamp, 6th fastest, Gabriel Gaudreau, 7th fastest, and that all jumps down a position because here is David Tanguay by 0.8 of a second for 2nd fastest. We are seeing a bit of a clash of the Titans here between Aston Martin and Chevrolet. It was an all Chevy front row, and that does leave the question, where is Karl Martel? Well, you can see he's finished the first of his rolling laps here. Now, we don't know whether or not it was an out lap and this is the start of his flying lap, or whether or not it was invalid. We'll have to catch up with him at the end of this lap coming. We're nearly halfway already into Quali 2, so that's just how quick these Quali sessions tick by here. I'd say realistically, you could even potentially suggest in Season 2 to cram 3 races onto one of these race days here in CPL. It is a mighty system indeed. It is one of the most enjoyable events from our point of view, and I imagine for your point of view at home. These very short fire, snappy races, a lot of action, very rich, dense flavour here for these races. Timo de Tosto then up to 3rd, just outside of the coveted 2nd margin there. David Tanguay, the only driver right now to be within a second of Christian Lebay's dominant times here in that Chevrolet. This is a man driving possessed here, and can we possibly suggest the opening up of that time even further? Is it even possible to suggest a 1:40 by the end of this qualifying session? 4.5 minutes then, sadly not on this lap, but I really do not doubt the possibility. Going to catch on board, as a matter of fact. Next driver to the line here, Liam Bello from 7th position. Can he get the time up on Kevin Quain? Yes, he can. What is the rebuttal then by Quain? As we see across the line there, has to make 2 tenths of a second. Doesn't manage on this lap just gone. Number 998 of Badiali then to make the second driver to make an inside the second margin push on Lebey's leading time here of qualifying. Puts himself just over half a second within reach. Going to quickly catch on board here. We try and find them just before the line here. Timo de Tosto from 4th, goes 3rd then, up and ahead of David Tanguay. So it's looking spicy here for Mercedes. Wasn't the best of race results, all things considered, especially when you compare it against De Tosto's pace over the course of the last 2 rounds. This is definitely looking like a return to form for the 58 at this time. Villorio then, having crossed the line for the top 5, puts Richard Cecil out of commission for a top 5 start. The Alpine still clinging to the hopes here, and you can see not too far away from him, Byron Forrest by 0.03 of a second. So it is still paper thin we're talking here in Quali 2. And speaking of Byron Forrest, we caught him right at the very end of his flying lap here and towards turn 16 and 17. If you're joining us now, you've just finished race 1 of 2 today here in round 2 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Byron Forrest then up and ahead of Richard Cecil, having cleared the margin by 6 tenths near abouts. They actually, realistically, 5 tenths, 700ths of a second to Richard Cecil's Alpine. Up to 6th then in the 824 Porsche. We saw how strong his performance was in race 1. Right now, could he be in that position to fight with Villorio and Tanguay for 4th position, of which he held onto with an iron vice in race 1? Badiali to the line. Can he open the taps here for a time closer to a 141.295? Yes, but not by enough here. We can see about a tenth on that lap, and feasibly we could see even another tenth on this lap coming, but it may not be enough time then. If it's a tenth a lap we're talking, it will not be enough to catch Lebey, and that is really the extent of the alien pace he brings to the table. It's a wing and a prayer to put him in the conversation here of losing pole position today. Karl Martell had a very good go of it in Quali 1. Right now, though, we've still yet to see a time from the 99. He's out through Cascades and is seemingly struggling to find that time necessary. Villorio doesn't struggle, though, as he finds himself up and ahead of Badiali and De Tosto for 2nd place. Tanguay now at the back of the top 5. Number 36 about to cross the line there. That would have been Alex Albert, now up into the top 10 ahead of Andrew Veldkamp. We'll catch on board here Byron Forrest in the discussion of a top 5 start here. Has to find 4 tenths of a second on David Tanguay's Aston Martin. On his exit of turn 16, then to turn 17 we go. And on this lap does find an improvement, finds 3 tenths. As a matter of fact, close, but no cigar right now. And he's got 1 more lap to prove his point. And David Tanguay is still out on track and will have 1 more lap as well, including this one. So a quali shootout wasn't what I was expecting on a scale this large. So we have 6 cars here vying for the front row. Right now it's Lebey and Villorio, a stark contrast of what we saw, which was Lebey and Martell. And we still hotly await to see that time by Karl Martell. You see De Tosto now up ahead of Tanguay. He takes that right back off of De Tosto. Aston Martin now up to 4th. We do actually just catch Karl Martell right at the end of this flying lap here from 15th. And sadly doesn't lay in a time. He's got 1 more opportunity here with 30 seconds. This does mark his last opportunity to set a time here in Quali 2. Are we seeing trouble yonder the horizon for the previous front row starter, Karl Martell, who finished 3rd in race 1 but a moment ago? Next driver to the line right now would be the 824. At least this is considering valid laps. Now the telemetry does show up and ahead right now the 39 of Christophe Dupois, but that appears to be on an invalid time. We will nonetheless watch Dupois on his way through turn 16 and 17 just to measure here as to whether or not our data has been incorrect. The number 39 from 14th position on his way to the line. Does actually set a valid lap. So yeah, looks can be deceiving, but he remains in 14th for the time being. Byron Forrest to the line. Can he find his way to the top 5? Has to find 3/10 against De Tosto. Sadly, not this time around, but good hustle on quali 2. The 119 to the line then. Can Lebay break the numbers here on 141? It's a 141.295. Sadly, no improvement on this lap. Not that I think he's going to need it. The number 101 is next to the line. Liam Bello from 9th position here at the end of qualifying 2. Through turn 17 we go. Up through Deer Leap to the line at the end of quali 2. He's up to 8th and ahead of Richard Cecil. Next to the line right now, John Prine, and then in hot pursuit behind him, another one of his fellow Chevrolets. Believe that to be right now. I do believe, yes, that is Carl Martel. So John Prine looking for an improvement up past 12th on Graham Green. Has to find 3/10 of a second on this lap. Carl Martel looking for higher endeavours, but can't find it in the same strengths he had it back in quali 1. Only starts today's coming race of race 2 in 8th. That is a stark difference from what we saw before. Now, can Anthony Velorio break the curse here of Lebay's dominant streak on qualifying? No. No one dare stand in the face of what has been imperial performance so far by Lebay. Velorio then, the best of the rest for the start of race 2. So we were not disappointed with how things panned out at the end of qualifying 2. We'll be getting on to the discussion of the grid for race 2 today. What a result we saw out of race 1 as well. Lebay, Tanguay, and then Martel to make your podium positions. A Chevy 1 and 3, the Aston Martin on debut. You can see just snugly fit in there between the Mercedes and the Chevrolet on our center of our screens. Marked quite the impressive entry to this championship, a late entry after round 1, and he made his way immediately to center attention, finishing 2nd on debut. He'll start from 4th in today's 2nd race of the day. And so, on to the discussion and a broadly different front row, and that's in terms of present company to Mr. Christian Lebay. He finds his way to pole position for the 2nd time running. Now, he's already secured the precipice for a Grand Slam. Now he is going for the Super Slam, so it seems, as he's now looking to lead every single session there is here in round 2 of the championship. He starts from another pole position today. Anthony Velorio now joins him on the front row, as opposed to how Carl Martel did for race 1. He finds himself 2nd on a very, very strong qualifying performance for McLaren. Giovanni Badiali finds himself on the 2nd row again, and joining him is David Tanguay, rounding out the top 5. Timo De Tosto, and alongside him for that third row is Byron Forrest. Kevin Quain and Carl Martel mark the 4th row for Mercedes and Chevrolet. Liam Bello and Richard Cecil to mark the last of our top 10 positions here. The 5th row for Chevrolet and Alpine. Clinton Bourne just outside of the top 10, looking for another top 10 finish today. It was a very hopeful result for the number 6. Since his departure as well away from Audi, it's seemingly been a gamble worth making them for the Australian. He lines up 11th, and alongside fellow Chevrolet Alex Albert in the 36th. Andrew Veldkamp in 13th, ahead of Graham Green in 14th, rounding out the top 15, John Prine and Gabriel Gorgio 16th, and Christophe Dupois starts at the back in 17th position. So the real discussion at play here is, can anyone stage an offensive in the opening 3 laps? That is the golden margin here. That is your perfect window to come and have a go at leading this race against Christian Lebay, because seemingly the moment the 119 is given even a smidgen of clean air, it's gone with the wind. So Velorio has really got make or break decisions to make here on his run down towards turn 1 at Old Hall. And that's going to be the same story for the drivers lining up on that row right behind these two. Badiali could usurp a control here for the lead of this race if he really plays his cards right. Now, this is widely dependent on if Lebay goes super defensive down into turn 1. Then we know the BMW has fantastic cornering capability up against Chevrolet. We know that stopping power, like the Audi, isn't the best. So definitely some considerations to be made heading down into Cascades, one of the major braking zones after turn 1. Now, we know it's a fast sweeping left-hander, but due application of the brakes are in course for that opening lap, as with any. David Tanguay is going to have his hands full as well, starting on that 2nd row. Timo De Tosto has got prime time viewing here of what is going to be an absolute bloodbath up on the first two rows here. We wait here with Christian Lebay. We'll be back in just a moment's time. We stay on board with Lebay, who's not only your race winner of race 1 today, but also has led every single session for what is so far a Grand Slam. He's looking for even higher endeavours, having led qualifying in Quali 2. Let's see what he can do then on the start of the formation lap. We'll be back in just a moment's time. So we're still on board with Christian Lebay. Starts from pole once more here for race 2 of today. Now to bring back up how the schedule was looking, we've just left Quali 2. And to see where we're at, we're heading into race 2 today. So another 30 minutes here on the charts before the end of our broadcast day and the end of round 2 of the championship. And getting a look onto that calendar then as to where we're charting off to next for round 3 of the championship. We head to the land of the rising sun at the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit on September 2nd, back into the 60-minute racing standard. And then we'll be joining back onto the double 30-minute double stint races at another MSV circuit, and one that I'm thoroughly looking forward to seeing the racing out of there, the Donington Park circuit on September 9th. It's going to be a very, very exciting next couple of weeks here on the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America season. We do look forward to being with you every step of the way here on TRTN. In terms of our personal broadcast news, we've got another round coming up this Saturday of the NLRL Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship, as well as, of course, the Sunday League on Sunday evenings at 6:30 BST. And we also got a round coming up from the High Caliber Community League for the opening of their GT4 Challenge Series, Saturday at 2 PM BST. Well, without further ado then, it's the last of our 2 races today as we come lining up 2 abreast down into turns 16 and 17. 17 cars in all. 8 on one side, 9 on the other. As we wait here with Christian Lebay for another 30-minute race today here. He starts from the leading position once more. Without further ado, here in Oulton Park for the last time today, we, without further call, are green and racing for the last time at a drive-through penalty. Befalls the 30 of David Tanguay. He had a great start, but a little too fast for the steward's liking. The Aston Martin immediately given a drive-through penalty. It's Lebay from Villorio. Badiali in 3rd. Tanguay in 4th, right alongside Badiali, down into Cascades, slots back in behind the BMW. Looking further down the field here, we can see quite a scrim indeed. Martel, Quain and Cecil there, all towards the back of the top 10. Bello right on their trails. We can see further up the order, De Tosto and Tanguay, as well as Byron Forrest there, caught in the middle. Watching with Carl Martel, he's already made up positions from the start. It's contact there behind him between Quain and Cecil. The Alpine touching doors there with the Mercedes. And another bit of contact sends him very, very far asunder. Getting a look at that on the replays before we've even exited turn 5. It looked like a bit of returning contact between the Merc and the Alpine. A bit of a washout wide there past the apex. There you can see the Newton's cradle there as befell the Alpine. I have to try and catch back up with the state of affairs over in Richard Cecil's Alpine. We can see a little bit of desync here as we make our way around Hislops. We can see absolute bedlam has unfolded there for quite a few drivers, including Graham Green and John Prine and Christophe Dupois. See Gaudreau and Veldkamp caught in the middle of it there, and the two Mercedes cars towards the back of the field. Richard Cecil now down to 12th. It's a devastating start for Alpine, but it can't be much worse than what's going on in the mind right now of David Tanguay, who has a drive-through penalty from the word go here. So his chances to fight for a race win today have been thrown asunder. He doesn't yet consider his chances to go into the pits. He still thinks he can measure this out on track. Right now, it's Lebay from Villorio, and we can see further down the line, Gaudreau potentially looking to get two abreast here with Christophe Dupois' Chevrolet down into turn one. That was so very nearly contact between the pair of them. Very well done to keep themselves out of any imminent trouble. We can see Andrew Veldkamp right behind Gaudreau on our way down into turn two at Denton's, then turn three at Cascades. Two Chevrolets and two Mercedes cars on our way through sector one. Could there be that move for the inside on Dupois in a moment's time here? Watching with Gaudreau, he is definitely sizing Dupois up, but he's losing steam every time he fails. We'll catch up with those guys later. Obviously, Timo de Tosto isn't wasting any time here. Now, despite that drive-through penalty on Tanguay ahead of him, he's still looking to pass the Aston Martin up on track. He has a point to prove here and a potential podium to prove in a moment's time. And see the train of cars forming at the rear of Byron Forrest. Among them here on our screens is Kevin Quain, caught in a bit of a crunch zone between a swarm of Chevrolets at his front and rear. Carl Martel and Liam Bellow in front in 6th and 7th. Behind him, Alex Albert and Clinton Bourne in 9th and 10th. So this is on all sides here defended by Chevrolets. That Mercedes definitely caught out amongst the crowd of American muscle. A little stab of oversteer behind there. That was Alex Albert. Very nearly found his way to the wall. We saw that stab out through Druids. He's done very well to keep that out of imminent trouble. See right now, Byron Forrest is being caught up by Carl Martel. Now, Martel is looking for a strong finish. He finished on the podium in race one. He is not looking at wasting any time here. He can see that third place is within reach. Now, that would be in the court of the number 58, the yellow and grey Mercedes in front of Byron Forrest on our screens at the moment. That would be Timo de Tosto, who's looking to inherit third from David Tanguay. So there's a lot to consider here in the opening 4 minutes. No 2 is the difference between this and race one. A lot to process in the opening 10 minutes of racing. We stay on board with Forrest. Right behind him, you can see the two Chevrolets could be getting into arms with one another in a moment's time. That'd be Carl Martel and Liam Bellow looking to potentially fight for position. We can see as well behind who we were previously on board with Kevin Quain. We can see Alex Albert and Clinton Bourne could be getting into arms for a jaunt of 9th position in a moment's time. You can see the two Chevys are incredibly close to one another past the exit of Britain's chicane. There's the leading Chevy. Christian Lebay forged out 2.5 seconds there from Anthony Villorio. It was close for a point there by about 0.6 of a second in the last lap gone. He has made it very quick and very clear to the rest of the grid. That's as close as you get. See here, Carl Martel taking up the role as the man in the middle for today as he finds himself stuck between that fight for 5th and potentially 4th up ahead. That's provisionally 3rd. And also stuck here behind that Porsche, not able to find a way around, and with Liam Bellow getting even more eager for the position he holds on to right now. There is a lot in the pipeline here between these drivers. David Tanguay comes in to take that drive-through penalty, so we're already seeing the first pieces be placed here on the proverbial chessboard. Out through turn one, it's Forrest from Martel and Bellow here for 4th position. Timo de Tosto now up to 3rd as he makes his way to Cascades. Bit of a moment of understeer there for the 99. That is going to invite Liam Bellow in to come and have a go here. We are now watching on our screens the fight for 5th position, the defensive fight right now in the court of Carl Martel. Let's see if we can catch on board with a man attacking for the very same position. We try and catch on board here with Liam Bellow. This could find itself very quickly to be that fight for 4th position. Now, I was discussing this earlier, that this could absolutely spill over into being a fight for fourth position here. The two Chevys were more concerned with one another for a time there, but now both of them seemingly having caught up. The 824 has put this up into jeopardy here for Byron Forrest. He's going to have to do another defensive masterclass. Now, oh my word, that didn't look too grand, as that appeared to be a disconnect for the 101 of Liam Bello. If I'm not mistaken there, my eyes do not deceive me. No, there's Bello there. So I am a touch confused. Well, that has got me a little bit confused there. No. Okay, so disregard what I said. That is not a disconnect for Mr. Liam Bello. He's fine. He's right there. You can see he's right behind Carl Martel. That definitely sent a bit of a shock into the system there. I'm all too familiar with what a server crash looks like. Let's not jinx things too early here, but oh, that really did have a bit of a lump in the throat there. That was a bit scary. So we watch from Liam Bello's point of view. We're back into that fight for fifth. Now, if he does have that little glitch again, we'll get on board with Carl Martel and see the defending point of view here, this fight for fifth place. Now, this could provisionally move up into being fourth here. Now, it depends on Martel's ability to reel in Byron Forrest. That gap sitting at around 9/10 of a second here. That Porsche is able to slowly open the gap up here on Martel. From Bello's point of view, though, this is all pay dirt. Every time that Martel fumbles his opportunity to catch Forrest, he is losing steam. He is burning those tyres out. Moreover, he is losing confidence, of which Bello is not losing. It's a catch-22 here for a driver in this position, because everything he doesn't risk, the driver behind will absolutely risk. See, joining us in chat as well as K1 Jupiter from earlier is Jason Bush, the champion of Season 2 of the NLRL Sunday League. Avid motorsports fan here joining us. And if you're joining us just right now, we're right in towards the 10-minute mark of Race 2 today of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, brought to you by Malois Transport and AssurAction Transport Expert. We already had an incredibly exciting Race 1, and that's been juxtaposed here by an equally exciting Race 2 for the opening 10 minutes, or 9.5 minutes if we want to get into pedantics here. Down into turn 16 we go then. We're watching with Liam Bello as he's losing ground here to Carl Martel. I think Martel may have just found the secret recipe for gaining so much time. They're back in droves. There's a yellow flag out, and it's for Albert and Bourne, as Tanguay now gets past the pair of them, says, I'll have that position off you, thank you very much. Those two got into arms about something there. Albert on the tradition of getting up on two wheels. Here comes the Aston Martin, taking its way around the outside at turn 16. So that's an exciting bit of news then. You've heard it here first from Jason Bush in our Twitch chat at the moment. And he is quoted as saying, I can't wait to join races in this league too when work schedule changes. Already have my red and black livery ready. So forgive me for maybe getting ahead of myself, but is that the confirmation from, from the driver himself that Jason Bush could be joining Malois Racing? That is a huge signing, monolithic proportions. Bear in mind, Jason Bush previously started driving in TRC. This is mega if this news is to be taken at face value here. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've still 20 minutes of racing left to go. That's in for the news of the future. Right now we see the race leader here, Christian Lebay, now leading by 2.8 seconds to Anthony Valorio in second. To recount where things have been after the opening 10 minutes, Valorio, of course, in second. De Tosto now onto the podium positions after that drive-through penalty on the race start for David Tanguay. Byron Forrest still in fourth, fighting for his life here once again. The master of fourth position here, the stonewall defender of the top four. He did so in race 1 with such brutal efficiency. And right now, history seems to be repeating itself all to the same. And we see right behind him was the fight between the sparring Chevrolets here in 5th and 6th, Carl Martel and Liam Bello, number 99 and number 101. Kevin Quain behind them with the Mercedes. Number 607 makes 7th position. And Richard Cecil in 8th with Alpine. David Tanguay, who had that drive-through penalty on the race start and finished on the podium, finished 2nd as a matter of fact in race 1, is on the slow crawl back to better results. He's in 9th right now, already having got a double take of positions here on Alex Albert, who's now at the back of the top 10, and Clinton Bourne, who's now been relegated outside of the top 10. He finished 10th in race 1, and it has been a massive move, as mentioned before, away from Audi, and this is a huge reinvigoration we're seeing here for the Australian talent, and more hopefully to follow in the future. See right now, Bello in trouble. So that is the yellow flags out on the exit of the Shell Oils corner for the 101 of Liam Bello. Could there have been an incident between himself and Carl Martel? Well, that looks to potentially be the end of the road here in race 2 for Liam Bello. Not entirely sure what's happened to the 101 Chevrolet, or for that matter, where on earth he is. See if we can try and catch the 101 here before he makes his way to the pit lane. Oh my word, we've just caught in a moment's notice there a bit of trouble down at Hislops and turn 12 as well. On the exit, we can quickly see here the fight between Forrest and Marta. Will be on board with that in a moment's time. But here is Liam Bello. So he didn't spin on the exit. He spun on the entrance and was caught on the inside loop. He's now 17th, but back into green flag conditions. That is a very bizarre incident then to befell the 101 of Liam Bello. So let's get on board with some of the other battles then in that stead. And the two Chevrolets being bumped up an extra position now marks both top 10 finishes for Albert and Bourne. As it stands in the next 17.5 minutes, these two looking to spar for 9th position. We'll be checking in with them, but we want to try and check in as well with that fight for 4th position. Let's see if we can catch on board with either Forrest or Martel. We can also see an incredibly close fight here for 11th between Graham Green, Andrew Veldkamp and John Prine. Porsche versus Mercedes versus Chevrolet. And now in the news for that fight of 4th position, it's simmered down a tad here through Britain's. Up the hilltop straight to Hislops. Right now, as it stands, gap 0.5 of a second between Forrest and Martel. So let's get back on board with the sparring Chevys we saw head down in through turns 1 and 2 but a moment ago. If we can catch them here before anything else kicks off. Let's see what is going on then between Clinton Bourne and Alex Albert. 16.5 minutes then left to go. Bourne looking for endeavours of 9th position here. Let's stay on board with the defending of two perspectives to get a scope as to what exactly is the strategy going forward for Clinton Bourne to overtake Alex Albert. These two got into an arms in an incident down at turn 16 not too long ago. Then both of them lost the position out to Tanguay, which we have on the replays. We'll show that up in a moment's time. Let's quickly get on board here with Albert. So in this very same section of the track, now bringing up the replays, they got into arms at this section. Getting around them only a few laps ago was Tanguay after that drive-through penalty. So these two now in a world of their own fighting for 9th position. Albert defending through turn 1 at Old Hall. Now to Denton's at turn 2 as we begin the run downhill towards Cascades. Clinton Bourne losing a bit of steam there for 9th position. We'll be getting back on board as things look to be hotting up inside the top 5. We'll be catching on with the Battle of Martel v Forest in a moment's time. That fight for 4th position. Furthest fight up the order here toward the race midway for race 2 of today. Catch up with Albert and Bourne in a moment's time. We take a look here. Back onto the perspective of Christian Lebay, and in the time we've last seen him has nearly doubled the gap of the lead of this race from around 2.5 to 4. Now we can see that Carl Martel has got the leg up here in the last time we saw them. Now this is for 4th position. Let's stay on board with these two as it looks to be hotting up for an all-out brawl for 4th position, as I highly doubt Byron Forrest is going to be taking this one lying down, as he's been holding on to 4th tooth and nail all through the last race and into this one. So with half a race still to play for here, it is all-out war between Chevrolet and Porsche. Martel's got benefit of straight line speed Forest has got benefit of cornering capacity here, so it is a very, very interesting argument to have as to who comes out on top. We've seen that in the hands of Christian Lepay, you can definitely have your cake and eat it too in terms of vehicle setup, as that Chevrolet has been performing on levels unparalleled. As you can see there, out through Cascades. This is where that 6.2 litre LT1 really comes into its own up against the flat six on that Porsche. But the moment we hit a corner there, like you saw at Island Bend, is when all of that time comes back into swing here for the Porsche. Out through turn 5, earlier on the throttle then for Karl Martel as he watches over his rear view at the approaching Porsche. Now into Britain's we go then. Very tight section of the track. Now, we've seen in battles before that the smaller cars like the Porsche and the Alpine get a lot of advantage in this area of the track, but because it's quite following oriented, not a lot of opportunities to go to abreast without imminent problems yonder the horizon. Actually, that's it's paradoxical saying that, imminent problems yonder the horizon. Doesn't make any sense. Imminent problems heading into the next corners. So right now, the gap between Forest and Martel, 1.2 seconds, but an absolute rotter out of Druids has invited Byron Forest back into the fight for 4th position, of which he retakes by the time we hit turn 16 at Lodge. That is fantastic then. One slip up has teetered this back in the direction of Byron Forest. Now Karl Martel has to do this all over again on his run down towards turn 1. But now he won't be fooled again. Byron Forest holds the inside at turn 1. Martel's going to have to try for the long way around if he means to hold that position. He's still behind by the time we hit Denton's. Bear in mind, these two spilling over one another is inviting in a third party here, and that's Kevin Quain in the 607. A minor touch of understeer there for the 99 of Martel. Could be showing signs of further problems for the Chevrolet here in the next 12 minutes of racing. Down into turn 5 we go then. Now we know this area of the track is where the Porsche has so much more advantage in the manoeuvrability department over the Chevrolet. So this is Byron Forest's premier opportunity to open the gap up from 0.3 of a second. We head into Britain's. And right now, in that fight for 4, Forest, Martel and Quain all joined by about 3/10, make it 4/10 of a second there as the concertina opens. Watching around the grid as well, you can see this is the fight for 4th position. Furthest fight up the order of any driver at the moment. Villorio in 2nd, Di Tosto in 3rd. Leading that charge as ever, Christian Lepay looking to take it all here in the second round of the championship. Sorry, he's not in 2nd, very clearly. But in the 2nd round of the championship, he's already hit the accolade of a Grand Slam here, leading free practice, leading Quali 1 and leading Race 1, but he is looking for a Super Slam here, Quali 2 and Race 2. And if he can stay where he is in the next 11 minutes, he will mark what I would definitely say is wider than just history here in the Competizione Performance League, but in TRTN history, as we have never seen it be a case where... hang on just a tick, because now my memory is being jogged here. Not that we have never seen this before, but that it is so rare we only have one other accounted note of that ever, and that would be Valencia, Season 8 of VSR Phoenix. Tommy took consecutive quali poles and race wins, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check my notes on that. We'll stay on board right now with Karl Martel against his fight here with Byron Forest for 4th position. Kevin Quain now 1.2 seconds away from the pair of them, has diluted the chances for the time being of 3 cars being in that fight for 4th. Right now it's back to the story of 2 for the time being. Let me just double check my notes here, because I am very curious to see if what we are witnessing before our very eyes is the first ever occurrence on TRTN's broadcast history of such a thing happening. Still watching here with Martel. 0.4 of a second then from Forest. Let's see if we can get a view from the defender's point of view. We quickly see here, Gabriel Gaudreau has caught up to John Prine in that fight for 14th position. We'll catch on with the results of that in a moment's time. We see here that just as we've caught back up to this pair, it's been even further complications for Martel as he runs things out wide at turn 16. So for Byron Forrest, he's now got a very confident bit of breathing space between himself and Martel in 5th as he holds on to what looks to be double 4th place finishes. And I must say that consistency goes a long way, and it will take him a long way if he can constantly fight off drivers that have got the pace on him. It's consistency that's absolutely key here, because we know on paper Martel is in theory faster. We've seen it over the lap times in the last couple of laps here, but it's consistency that is the downfall right now of Martel, or the lack thereof in today's races. He's just not been able to extract 100% out of that Chevrolet, so it seems. There's been more issues than there have been solutions. And you cannot say that by contrast for Byron Forrest, because I have never seen, well, unless you take a look up front, I have not seen a more confident drive. Really, from the word go, Byron Forrest really doesn't seem to have run into any trouble today, so it seems. He's been able to keep his head low, he's been able to capitalize on the mistakes of the drivers around him, and that consistency is netting him those constant top 5 appearances. Right now, if he is to finish where he is, he would not have finished outside of the top 5 all season. That is pretty solid, if you ask me. So as we stay on board here with Byron Forrest, we'll just quickly check in on our notes here as to precisely. Now, this is something I'm avid to find out, because this could massively decide what the overall reaction is. We do have yellow flags out. It's for the number 6. I believe that to be... Oh, yes, it is. It's Clinton Bourne. We are quickly just seeing here. Bit of a bout here for 7th position. Richard Cecil versus David Tanguay. Let's stay on board just quickly here with the Alpine, having just lost out 7th. We're getting a little too caught up with our notes here to try and figure out whether or not this is the first time we've ever seen it. I believe it is in the case of pole positions. I'm not 100% on that. We could be on the precipice here of seeing the first ever multi-race. So this would be your double sprint in any format. The first multi-race Grand Slam, what I'm going to affectionately dub the Super Slam. Up through Hilltop then. So Tanguay is on the charge here, and the more that Martel, Quain and Forrest trip over one another to hold on to 4th place, the more that Aston Martin is being invited in. But you've really got to ask yourself, at this point in the race, 6 minutes left to go, is there even enough time if Tanguay is to put his foot firmly through the floor of that Aston Martin and go hell for leather on the next 6 minutes? Can he even be within the conversation of a top 5 finish after that drive-through penalty? Really, that is a conundrum. And yes, it was Clinton Bourne who appears to be a DNF in today's race. So that is mighty unfortunate for the number 6. Had a solid finish of race 1. Didn't quite catch what happened there as we were checking our notes. But the number 6 sadly is out of race 2 today. We were just over, was out of the race with just over 6 minutes to go. We're now just under 5.5 at the time that we're speaking here before the end of today's race. Having a look around, we've got one of the nearest fights at the moment appears to be unfolding between Badiali and Veldkamp. So it's all come asunder for Badiali as well. I must concur that he was up towards that top 5 for a time and now finds himself down in 12th. Now, could it be suggested another drive-through penalty hit Badiali amongst the confusion inside the top 10? Wouldn't be ruled out here, as he's also faced drive-through penalties in the last round gone. So definitely on the table. Watching here with Badiali, that's in that fight for 11th place right now. We'll stay on board with him. Also see behind the fight for 13th seems to be raging on still between Prine and Gaudreau. We're watching the fight for 11th here between Giovanni Badiali and Andrew Veldkamp. BMW versus Mercedes then. Battle of the German Giants on their way down towards Hislops here. And taking the long way around. Has he overcooked his brakes? No, that was pitch perfect by Giovanni Badiali. That was perfect by him. You can see here, it's gone the long way around and he has absolutely nailed the braking point down into turn 10. Now as we make our way to turn 15, he has got that well and truly solidified. Bravo and hats off there to Badiali. That was clinical. So having a look around the field then to see where our next fights are coming from. We've been drawing the attention back towards the top 5. As we can see, it's 0.3 of a second now for Byron Forrest to Timo de Tosto. So that fight for third has now finally met the 824. He's been rewarded all throughout these last 2 races for such promising consistency. And he was fighting off 4th position from a whole swarm of cars towards the back of that top 10 at one point in race 1. Now it seems that his time has come to fight for a podium here. We do thoroughly look forward to seeing how this pans out. Mercedes versus Porsche, De Tosto versus Forest. So to check, yes, we went and ran through the evidence here, and it was season 8 at Valencia in VSR Phoenix was the first time we ever saw a multi-race Grand Slam, and that was by the number 66 of Tommy. He ended up qualifying on pole and then winning race 1 and then qualifying on pole again and winning race 2. So we are seeing the very same performance emerge from the court of Christian Lebay. We will triple check those notes here. We do want to know if we are breaking solid ground here. We sadly don't have the results for free practice, so sadly we may never know. Keen-eyed viewers can feel free to go onto the TRTN YouTube channel and look through the VSR Phoenix Season 8 playlist to the Valencia round and prove us wrong. But I think we may be seeing the creation of some history here in TRTN, as having led practice, having led both qualies, and now having led every lap of both races here with only 2 minutes left to go, Christian Lebay could be looking at something I can only describe as unprecedented by all accounts. We're still watching, though, the fight for third here between Byron Forrest and Timo de Tosto, what's taking center stage of our attention right now, as opposed to the discussion up front. And this is hotting up here. We can see, though, yellow flags do fly behind them. The 607 in imminent trouble. As we see looking further down the field for just a moment, Kevin Quain caught up in some fuss there with the number 30. We will have to catch back up in a moment's time, though, because it is looking to kick off in a moment's notice here for Byron Forrest. He's still right up to the back end of Timo de Tosto's Mercedes. Now on the exit of turn 12. So we're back in the green flag conditions. It was the number 6 and number 607 and the number 30. So that would be David Tanguay, as a matter of fact, which was caught up there. Yellow flags are right out in front here. The number 39 was in trouble. We couldn't actually quite see him. Is now getting back going from behind them there. You can see off in the distance, kicking up quite a bit of dust, is Christophe Dupois. We're still watching that fight for third, though. The leader is on his final lap, so Christian Lebay only has a few more corners here before potentially making TRTN history. Now, we will follow this investigation up in round 3 of the championship. As a matter of fact, we could even follow it up in the HCCL race, but we'll leave that for another time. As of right now, we're still watching what is a coveted fight for third place all the way to the very, very bitter end here of race 2. As we can see, joining the fight from 5th appears to be Karl Martel. So don't go anywhere there on the discussion of third place. All of this for the last of those podium positions. Timo de Tosto from Forest, from Martel. That pressure definitely getting to de Tosto here. Martel and Forrest now breathing down his neck. We are on that final lap already, and that's all but confirmed it on our maps at the moment, heading just out through turn 12 into Clay Hill at turn 13. We'll be catching on with Christian Lebay in a moment's time. That fight for third is still raging on and could kick off into side-by-side action at a moment's notice here. I think we may just catch it on our way down towards Hislops. We've got very little time left in it. Byron Forrest trying for around the outside. Can he make this one stick? Out through Hislops, then to turn 12. There was all manner of dust kicked up in the face of it. My word. Christian Lebay on the meantime, by the way, is coming down to the line to win in race 2, but it is absolute warfare for the last of those podium positions. I can't speak. On our way down towards turn 15, it's disaster for Byron Forrest. Oh my goodness gracious me, it has all come asunder. In the meantime, Christian Lebay is your race winner for race 2. We are going to quickly catch on board what goes on here. It's a sudden move for third place. Oh my word. Carl Martel takes home another podium on the very last corner of the last lap. Unbelievable. What a second race we've just had there. So close. We were paying attention to that fight that sadly we couldn't see Lebay across the line, but that all but confirms it. 2 race wins, 2 pole positions, and led every bit of that free practice session. My God, what a performance from Christian Lebay. What a performance as well by those joining him on the podium, especially that breakout there by Carl Martel. Good Lord above. That is a finish for the ages. Di Tosto in 4th, Forrest in 5th. Lamenting on what could have been there. Things got incredibly hairy in through that last lap, but to the line, he's in the top 5 still. Richard Cecil snuck his way to 6th place there with Alpine. Another solid drive by the number 5. Kevin Quain in 7th there, got into arms with David Tanguay. There will be words between these two, I dare imagine, down through turn 5. Alex Albert in 9th, Badiali in 10th, Green in 11th, Veldkamp 12th, Godrow just crossed the line for 13th, alongside him there, John Prine in 14th. Liam Bello on his way to the line. He persevered there after that incident down at turn 5 and was adamant to make it to the checkered flag here. He finishes 15th. Dupois in 16th. Clinton Bourne did get back out on track there after whatever went on for the... Oh my God. That is... Oof. You never want to get caught doing that live, do you? I mean... Was that... I don't know. Was that deliberate? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. This is not the first time here on TRTN that we've caught a deliberate incident like that. Nürburgring. Sorry, lump in my throat there. Heading to the line comes Clinton Bourne for 17th position here in race 2. What an end then to race 2. A historic 3-car fight all the way to the line, and the victor of it for another podium is Carl Martel on a blindsider move. Timo de Tosto slipped but for a moment at turn 16 and history was made. That was brutal. What a pleasure, honestly. As I mentioned back in Laguna Seca, I do not lament the fact that I've got to be up at 1 in the morning. It's 3 in the morning right now where we're recording in the UK. And I do not lament that fact whatsoever. I don't even mind if I get a noise complaint from the neighbours, because it is absolutely worth showing up to races like these. It is belter after belter after belter. You are in no short supply of belters in this league. And what a drive that has been on all fronts there. So we got word there from Liam Bello on what precisely went down. His wheel fell off. That's what caused him to go all the way asunder from turn 4 to what looks like the exit of turn 5 was actually the walls for the inside of turn 5 at the Shell Oils curve. So that was truly quite bizarre there. So your results then for the podium of race 1, it's Christian Lebay from David Tanguay and Carl Martel. For race 2, it's Christian Lebay from Anthony Villorio to Carl Martel. What a race that has been, though, truly, and what an ending. You're in no short supply for cinema here in the Competizione Performance League, and getting a gander to where we'll be heading next. here for race 3 onwards. As we mentioned earlier in the stream, we're heading back into the 60-minute race format and heading to Suzuka. You'll be catching us then, for those tuning in from the United States, on September 2nd. For those of you tuning in for the United Kingdom, September 3rd at 1 a.m. BST, in the very late at night hours broadcast here on TRTM. We will not miss it for the world, though. And what a race that has been. And some well-earned R&R then from us here before we get ready to do things all over again on Saturday with HCCL and NLRL. It's going to be busy for us in the next couple of months, and I'm getting used to it. And I would not miss a race like this for the world. What a result then. Very well done to everyone who showed up, and our podium sitters there for race 1 and 2, and everyone in the top 5 and top 10 and beyond. That was cinema. Let's not make any mistake of that. And we get to do it all over again this time next week. So thank you so much for watching. That's all from us here on TRTN, and good night.